This is a committal service setup featuring a Wilbert Monticello, one of the most commonly chosen burial vaults in this industry. It features a high-impact interior plastic liner with a butyl adhesive seal, surrounded by a concrete exterior protecting the liner from the elements. The interior liner, along with the seal, is what provides the air and watertight seal to the burial vault. The concrete is there to strictly protect the interior liner from damage. Burial vaults are used across the United States, and in most cemeteries, including in the area where I work, they're required by cemeteries in general, whether that be a lined and sealed burial vault or a burial container of some sort. The primary use for a burial container of any kind is to prevent the ground from collapsing above the casket as the casket deteriorates. Without a burial vault or a burial container, the ground would settle over the years as the casket deteriorates, causing the cemetery more maintenance in top-filling the grave and reseeding. The way that our vault company sets up burial vaults is referred to as the Wilbert Way. This process suspends the burial vault above the grave, making sure that the entirety of the vault is visible to the family and that the burial vault can be sealed above ground, making sure there are no obstacles or debris in the way of the burial vault seal. Some other vault companies choose to place the base of the vault in the bottom of the grave when they arrive in the cemetery, and the lid of the burial vault is placed off to the side, or it remains on the vault cart while the service takes place. In my opinion, this doesn't sit right with me. If a family chooses the burial vault, chooses the color, and color matches the vault to the casket, they should be able to see the burial vault in its entirety in the cemetery and watch the sealing process above ground to ensure it is performed properly. To begin the Wilbert Way setup process, we need to build a stable platform for the burial vault so the weight is dispersed away from the walls of the grave. We do this by placing planks flat to the ground with 4x4s on top of the planks and wood and aluminum boards to support the weight of the vault off to the sides. The reason that I use wood boards on the back side is because they have a little bit more spring. On the back side of the burial vault, no one will be walking and no flowers will be placed on the wooden boards. I use aluminum boards towards the family side. This creates a more stable platform for me to walk across when I'm assisting the family with the casket. It also creates a platform to place flowers and still give me room to walk. We run 6-7 different trucks at a time, and these are the boards that I currently have available to me for use. If it were up to me, I would have aluminum boards across the entire top of the platform, because in general, aluminum boards are stronger. Now that we have our platform set up and level, we can place the burial vault above the grave, and we do this using the Johnny handler from True Rebel Equipment. During transport, the burial vault is strapped down to the buggy, and the winch cable is run below the vault and attached to the buggy frame, making sure that the vault cannot shimmy its way towards the end of the buggy. Once we remove that cable, we can relieve all of that slack that's in the winch to make sure that the slack does not let loose while placing the burial vault, and we can attach the winch to the harness that goes around the vault and lifts the vault onto the grave. At our vault company, we utilize both vault carts, like this Johnny handler, but also battery-powered carts called Hilljoys that drive the burial vault from the top of the truck down onto the ground, and then it ramps up on top of the platform. For my first 8 years in this industry, the only tool that I used was a Hilljoy. And through that time, I got extremely used to it, and I might even say pretty good at using a Hilljoy. But once I started using a Logan vault handler from Axis Corporation, which is now a Johnny handler from True Rebel Equipment, I knew I'd never prefer a Hilljoy again. The main reasoning is that it eliminates multiple steps that must be used when using a Hilljoy. It also turns, which is a big bonus for moving the vault to the grave. While using a Hilljoy, it must be driven on top of a turntable, and force and manual labor is how the vault turns when using a hilljoy. Using a Johnny handler also prevents the risk of caving in the grave. With a hilljoy, the vault must be driven right to the side or right to the end of the grave, which can oftentimes put a lot of pressure next to the grave, causing one of the walls to collapse in. Today I'm in the far edge of the cemetery with not a lot of headstones around, so I was able to drive right to the end of the grave. If there were headstones at both ends of this grave, I would have maneuvered the vault cart to the side and placed the vault down sideways over the grave. Aligning the burial vault properly over the grave at this step removes multiple steps later in the process. When we suspend the vault over the grave, it's a process that we refer to as swinging, because the vault base will be suspended by cables over the grave, and it can move side to side and end to end. If the burial vault is aligned properly over the grave during this step, moving the vault later on using the cables will not be necessary. Now that the vault is placed over the grave, we can lock down the buggy and remove the harness from the burial vault. While the service takes place, we'll drive the buggy out of sight and out of the way to make sure it doesn't block any of the drives for the family entering the cemetery. Now, while I do my best to take great care of the burial vaults on the way to the cemetery, they can get scratched up and the paint can get chipped from having the straps over the side and from loading the burial vault onto the buggy at the shop using the harness. So on every committal service, we bring touch-up paint for whatever color the burial vault is for that day. Today's burial vault is what's referred to as Wilbert's russet color. It's a warm, brownish color that goes really well with most accents on caskets such as bronze, copper, or gold. And this morning started with a 2-hour drive, so in that time, there are plenty of chances for the cables to slip and for the straps to rub their way through the paint. So before we even begin swinging the burial vault, I'm going to go over the entire lid and make sure that there are no spots with paint missing. And looking back, it would have been smarter to just have brought a paint roller that we used to paint the vaults, because this lid needed almost an entire extra coat. Painting and personalizing the burial vaults is one of the aspects of this line of work that I thoroughly enjoy. At different times, I'm given the opportunity to let some of my artistic freedom show through, and I can personalize burial vaults in many different ways. Recently, I've posted a video of a camouflage burial vault that I spent 3 days painting, and it turned out absolutely beautiful. And while there's nothing wrong with the standard Wilbert colors like russet, gold, copper, and silver, having the opportunity to really personalize and customize a burial vault, depending on someone's desires and personality, can really mean a lot to a family when they arrive at the cemetery. When my grandfather passed away, he was prearranged with a local funeral home to receive a Wilbert Monticello at the cemetery. And while a Wilbert Monticello is a quality lined and sealed burial vault, I thought my grandpa would have appreciated a little bit of something more. With Wilbert burial vaults starting with the Wilbert Citadel, we're able to do customized prints over the top of the burial vault. My grandfather was a farmer his entire life, and he collected model John Deere tractors. So rather than a silver Wilbert Monticello, I chose to go with a Wilbert Citadel, which is a burial vault with a black interior liner with a cover that has a personalized carapace over the top. For that, we chose a farm scene. It was an open field with an International Harvester tractor right in the middle, so we photoshopped that tractor out and placed a John Deere in the center. On the right-hand side, we put a portrait of my grandfather, and on the left-hand side was a red barn. To match with the John Deere theme, I painted the base of the burial vault John Deere green with a yellow highlight over the textured areas, and the lid was painted John Deere yellow with a green highlight over the textured area on the lid. When my family arrived to the cemetery, they weren't expecting anything of the sort. And a lot of times, funeral directors will also help personalize the burial vault by incorporating one of their hobbies or interests of the person who has passed. And when the family arrives to the cemetery, it's that extra touch that shows that us as a vault company and the funeral director themselves are paying attention and do care about the family and about the life that's being celebrated on that day. But now that the burial vault's paint has been touched up, and is drying, we can go ahead and begin the burial vault swinging process. And this starts out by covering up our wood boards and aluminum boards with green carpets that are referred to as runners. Runners are the same length as our long green carpets, but half the width. And since this is a new funeral home and a new cemetery that I've never been to before, I was unaware of their rules and regulations when I arrived. Luckily, the manager of the cemetery was there, and at their cemetery, they do not allow carpets to be placed underneath the tent, most likely due to a fall incident that occurred years ago. Now, because of a fall incident that I had when I first started in this job, I staked down my carpets on every service, making sure that they're as close to the ground as possible, and it's as hard as possible to get your foot up underneath one of the carpets, causing a trip. That being said, we still respect the cemetery's rules and their regulations, and today I didn't put down any big carpets, but if it was raining, or it had been raining, I would still put down one carpet underneath the chairs. We do service funeral homes at times that don't like big green carpets because of trip hazards, but if there's not a carpet down and we place the chairs on wet ground, there is the possibility of sinking the chair into the ground, causing a different type of fall hazard. Our main goal in a cemetery is safety and professionalism. To swing a burial vault, we align equipment on each end of the vault that are referred to as feet. This equipment reels the cables 8 times on each end and is connected using a device called the one-man bar. It's referred to as a one-man bar because it connects the 2 sets of feet and allows one man to raise and lower the burial vault. On these feet, each end has a place for the crank to attach, which turns the gearing and raises and lowers the burial vault using the cables. On a typical service with the lid pushed back away from the family, we'll place the one-man bar in between the lid and the cover. This makes sure that the one-man bar is out of the way when I'm assisting the pallbearers with the casket, and it's not impeding us from placing flowers in front of the burial vault. For a Wilbert ovation service where the lid is leaned down on bent rails towards the family, the one-man bar will also be aligned towards the family side, making sure that on the back side of the vault that I still have room to walk and it's not in the way when placing the casket. It's at this time we would make any adjustments to the burial vault if needed. By shifting the feet and the cables to one side or to one end, we can adjust the burial vault over the platform to fit directly into the grave. If we perform the setting process with the Johnny handler, we shouldn't have to maneuver the burial vault to either side or either end at all. What we do want to make sure is that when we do raise the burial vault off of the aluminum boards, that it doesn't shift to either side, or especially shift over our wood boards or aluminum boards, preventing the vault from entering the grave. Now that we're sure that it's aligned properly over the grave, we can add the devices that will separate the lid from the base. The lid carriers attached to the lid and clamped down. The lid rails are attached to the feet directly underneath the carriers so that the wheels on the carriers will catch on the rails as the burial vault is being lowered, resulting in the lid being separated from the base. When swinging the burial vault, we make sure that there's around 3/4 of an inch of space in between the reels on the feet from the burial vault. This makes sure that the wheels on the carriers are aligned directly above the lid rails. And as always, we'll clean as we go, making sure that nothing is dirty, filled with water spots, or just dusty in general. We work in all different types of weather, so oftentimes this equipment can get water spots and dirt, and cleaning it daily can prevent the rust from accumulating on the stainless steel or the metal parts. Every few months I enjoy a day in the shop where I can actually take all my equipment apart, polish, buff, and shine everything professionally to make sure that all of our equipment appears to be in working order, but is also in working order. Even if your equipment is functioning at 100% of its capability, if it is dirty and rusty, it does not appear to the family and the funeral directors as though it's in working order. The last thing we would want as a vault company at a committal service is for a family to point out that something appears to be dangerous or unsafe. So we want to make sure that everything appears in working order and is in working order. And that includes cleaning up our equipment constantly, and also constantly making sure that all of our equipment functions as designed. I've heard dozens and dozens of stories about disasters happening at Committal services when equipment fails, and I pray, and I knock on wood, that I'm never the one on the Committal service for that to happen, and I pray that it never happens to another family, which is part of the reason why I make these videos, is to try to help other vaultmen do their job to the best of their abilities and know every tip and trick in the book to prevent any type of disaster. Now that our rails are attached and our carriers are attached, it's time to remove our aluminum boards, make sure all of our carpets are straight, neat, and folded, and then we can separate the lid from the base after checking to make sure that both rails are at the perfect angle and they're also at the exact same angle. It can be difficult to see, but the lid rails have an ever so slight bend just past the right hand side of the feet. When the weight of the burial vault lid is pushed back on the rails level out from that bend and the lid will be perfectly level. When placing the rails, they should be at an ever so slight uphill angle to the right, away from the base of the burial vault. If the ends of the rails are perfectly level when installed, the weight of the lid when pushed back on the rails will slightly bend the rails and it will appear as though the lid or the base is leaning backwards away from the family. And to me personally, when seeing that, the vault doesn't look as stable as it should. But now that we're sure that all four wheels of the carriers are aligned properly on top of the rails, we can lower the base to its display height and push the lid back to the end of the rails. The reason that we lower the base just underneath the rails on the feet is so that when we place the frigid imperial lowering device, that the pistols on the lowering device have room to freely swing down without catching the sides of the burial vault. This would prevent the casket from fitting into the vault because those pistols would be in the way. And while the crew and myself do a great job manufacturing these burial vaults, they don't get perfectly cleaned up at the shop before they're put in storage to cure. So I use a rag and some Windex to get rid of a little bit of that excess concrete liquid that gathers around the lip of the base, and just a rag to clean up a little bit of the excess paint if any of the paint splattered onto the liner. Also at times, small bits and pieces of concrete liquid will dry and fall into the bottom of the vault, and I'll just use my leaf blower to blow those small pieces out to make sure the interior of the base of the burial vault is clean and free of debris. It's now time to install the lowering device, and this device is crucially important, especially when it comes to the stories of accidents and equipment failures that have occurred on committal service setups. When the family arrives to the cemetery, it is our responsibility to assist them with placing the casket onto the lowering device and lowering the casket onto the safety bars. For these committal service setups, I prefer the frigid imperial lowering device because of the way it is designed in a different way from other lowering devices. This device has a main front roller, and then it has 4 pistols that are attached to gearing attached to the rails on the sides of the device. One set of pistols has a thread, and the other set of pistols have a pass-through for the guide bars. The guide bars allow the family to simply set the casket on the first large roller. I will then be on the side of the burial vault to assist them in guiding the casket over the first set of rollers. Once it's on the first set of rollers, it seamlessly slides over the guide bars and clears the second set of rollers as well. These guide bars make sure that it's not possible for the casket to enter down into the burial vault missing the second lowering device strap. Other lowering devices use detachable rollers that don't have guide bars, and if the casket is a solid oak or extremely heavy, sometimes the casket doesn't clear the roller and it gets stuck, or worse, falls down into the vault. With the guide bar system and the safety bar system, this risk is almost eliminated entirely. We simply tighten down the lowering device to where the blue straps have a fair bit amount of rigidity, and then we will raise the pistols up level, which gives the guide bars an ever so slight incline to make sure the casket clears the second strap. And once it does, there's a casket stop on the end of the device. Once in place, we will use the crank and unlock the lowering device, lowering the casket down onto the safety bars, which are there to strictly make sure that the casket doesn't roll back towards the first roller, and so that it's aligned perfectly over the burial vault when it's time to lower the casket. Since the pallbearers just have to place the casket on the first roller, they don't have to straddle the burial vault on both sides to place the casket onto the device. This would be almost impossible given the fact that the lid rail is in the way for the pallbearers on the right-hand side in this video. Having a lowering device that doesn't require the family to straddle the vault is incredibly important because it allows any family member to be a pallbearer. You don't have to be young and strong to be a pallbearer, and even children can help pallbearer because they don't have to get on both sides of the vault, so it allows all family to participate. The last step in the process of setting a Wilbert Monticello is to place the T-carpets, and these carpets are designed to go over the feet and hide our equipment and our 4x4s and boards. On a service like today, where carpets are not allowed, I keep them folded up and tight to the end of the grave. On days when we do set out our big green carpets, I will unfold these carpets and they make a T-shape that fits out and covers the sides of the boards and ends up evenly matching with the ends of the long green carpets on the sides. But now that the burial vault is swung and completed, with the only steps remaining to add the nameplate, emblem, and trademark, we can move on to our committal service tent. And one of the other rules at this cemetery is that they don't allow extensions. I don't fully understand that one, but because it's a beautiful day, I'm going to do what's referred to as an offset, which means we start the tent in front of the burial vault, and we don't place the tent over the burial vault in any way. This allows for much more room under the tent, especially since it's 8 feet shorter than it normally would be. The tent that I use is a 15-foot by 20-foot tent that has 6 poles, 4 corners and 2 center frame poles. It then has a 15 by 20-foot canvas top that is attached using pins and the top extension poles attaching to the top extension frame. And while a committal service tent appears pretty straightforward, for some reason the new guys really struggle on getting one of these tents perfectly straight. The person that I'm laying to rest today was an Army veteran, so we thank him for his service, but we also want to represent his time in the services, so we will be placing American flags and Army flags on extension tent poles on the ends of the tent. I get fairly lucky on days like today when there's little to no wind in any way, and there's no rain in the forecast either. Our main priority with the committal service tent is sheltering the family from the elements in the cemetery. On a day like today, the tent isn't doing too much. The family will already be seated in the shade of the trees, but we'll set the tent, of course, anyways. Later on in the year, when it gets cold outside, or when it's raining, windy, or just plain miserably hot and sunny, the tent provides shade from the sun and shelter from the rain, ice, and snow. When it gets extremely cold outside, we have canvas walls that can surround the entirety of the tent. In those cases, we also run propane heaters underneath the tent, and if there's not much wind, we can heat up the interior of the tent by around 20 to 30 degrees. This canvas is much thicker than your average camping tent, and it's waterproof as well, so most of the time the rain just runs right off, or at least it doesn't come through and drip onto the family members. To attach the main frame top, we start with 2 corners, making sure that the banner is out facing the road, which today was actually a mistake because I do not have a banner for this funeral home yet. This is the very first committal service we provided for this funeral home, and it takes a few weeks to get a banner in from the company that we use. In situations like this, or when one funeral home has multiple different services in a day, we will set the banner to the backside, having it hidden, or we will place our banner for our shop name in the front as well. To erect the main top, we set the 6-pole main frame piece into the center, and then we use one of the extension poles to prop up the entire tent as we place the rest of the poles into the corner spots with their pins. Once all of the poles are in place, we can go around and make sure all of our straps are connected and all of our hooks are aligned tightly over the tops of the frame. When it's extremely windy outside, the entire main frame can be pinned together as well, so that when ropes are placed on the corners, they can be pulled in every direction without fear of the frame coming apart. Personally, I've never been hit in the head with one of these tent poles, but I watched it happen when I was in training almost a decade ago. And from that day forward, I made sure to know that I need to keep my eye on these poles and make sure everything is attached properly for my own safety, but also for the families as well. These are lightweight aluminum poles, but they can definitely leave a mark. The only time I've ever been really in fear about losing a tent in a storm or in the wind was around 5 years ago in Frankfort, Indiana. It was a horrible thunderstorm, and a funnel cloud was spotted less than a mile away from me. I had everything strapped down using ratchet straps to keep the frame in place, and I had a tent pole up with a Purdue flag that day, and the wind was so strong it bent the flagpole in half. With fear that the tent would fall apart on me, I drove my work truck underneath the tent and used a ratchet strap to attach the top of the main frame of the tent to the top of the frame of my truck bed on the back. The storm passed, and my tent was fine, but the flagpole definitely needed replacing. Oftentimes, a funeral home may request multiple different flags, so I keep 2 flagpoles on my truck. For instance, on my grandfather's service, we had an American flag, a Cubs flag, a Navy flag, and an Illini flag. For this service, I just happened to buy 2 new Army flags at Lowe's the morning of because somewhere one got lost, and we need to make sure we have multiple of every flag, so I had 2 American and 2 Army flags on my truck to fly at this service. When it comes to flags for services, we all carry an American flag on our truck, but we also offer all the branches of the armed forces as well. We also have prisoner of war flags, Harley-Davidson flags, Cubs, Cardinals, Chicago Bears, the Purdue flag, the Masons, the Illinois State Police, the Thin Blue Line flag. We have just about any flag you can think of, and if we don't have it, there's a good chance that if we know soon enough, we can get one ordered and have it for the service. But now that the burial vault setup is complete, and the tent setup is complete, we can move on to setting our 12 committal service chairs with our 12 chair covers. 12 chairs is our standard number for every service, but we've used as many as 50 on a service before when a funeral home asks us to bring more and we have the chairs available to use. We also set out complimentary tissues on the chairs as well. In the wintertime, aside from setting heaters, we also set lap blankets on the chairs as well for the family to cover their legs up while the service takes place. I'm not entirely sure why, but it always seems like cemeteries have the extremes of all weather. So if it's hot out, it's hottest in the cemetery. If it's cold and windy, you can bet it's colder and windier out in the cemetery as well. And as I've said before, it's our number one goal and priority to offer a safe, sheltered environment for the family when they arrive at the cemetery. Today's committal service setup is almost complete. The only thing left to do is make sure that we know our alignment of the cemetery. So today's grave is in a north-south fashion rather than an east to west fashion. And as a general rule, when graves are aligned north-south, the feet of the individual being laid to rest will be towards the south, and the head end of the casket be towards the north. Wilbert burial vaults are designed with the nameplate and trademark at the foot end of the vault and the emblem at the head end of the vault. I have seen other vault companies do it the opposite way. In my opinion, it's just important to make sure that when the casket is placed, it is aligned correctly. Nameplates are often color matched to the burial vault as well. This russet will receive a gold nameplate and emblem. If this vault were copper, it would receive a silver nameplate and emblem. And if the vault is painted a custom color, the nameplates can also be painted to match the burial vault as well. For this service, a wreath was chosen to be placed where the emblem goes on the burial vault. On today's service, my bearings were not correct when I entered the cemetery, and I placed the trademark at the wrong end of the vault lid. When this mistake is made, I chose to place a trademark at both the head end and the foot end of the vault. Given the appropriate time, I could have used the vault cart to lift this lid off the rails spin it, and place it back down. At our company, each burial vault technician is given around 3 hours to set up a committal service. Now, committal services don't take near that long to set up. On an average day, it takes anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour and a half to set a committal service. The extra time is not to make sure that we can work slowly or not work hard. It's so that if anything malfunctions or breaks, we have an ample amount of time to get to the cemetery and replace a part, replace a piece of equipment, or replace the vault if something were to happen. The last thing we would want is for something to malfunction and for us to have to call the funeral home and let them know that a committal service is not set and ready to go. If a truck tire blows out on the highway, or if there's a crash and we get stuck in traffic for over half an hour, we never really know exactly how much time we'll have once we arrive at the cemetery. So it's better safe than sorry to make sure that the family gets the committal service setup that they deserve. This committal service setup, featuring a Wilbert Monticello, is set and ready for when the family arrives. And while I don't fully agree with the cemetery's regulations on how we're allowed to set up the burial vault, I can't help but admire everything that this cemetery has to offer in terms of historic value. It is a blessing to see so many different cemeteries and so many different monuments in this line of work. Thank you all for watching the setup process for a Wilbert Monticello. God bless and take care.